Greetings and welcome to the Sephirah Center of Shamanism. My name is Luke, experienced practitioner and mentor of the shamanic and occult sciences. Welcome back to my channel. On this channel, we break down all things relating to the ancient technologies of both shamanism and the occult, bringing them into balance with the deep psyche. Before I start this topic, as usual, check out my membership programs. First and second links of the description of this video. The first link is the Patreon, which is growing by the day in content. Lots of new content, lots of channeled occult path workings, lots of initiatory systems, lots of transmissions of lots of different healing modalities. First link in the description. Second link is the premium membership, whereby you will find lots of exclusive content, which has already been recorded from live webinars, alongside lots of other live webinars, lots of initiatory rituals into the dark matter realms and the deep psyche, as well as the opportunity to work with me directly. As I said, links are in the description. So, on to today's topic. Vampirism is the topic today, or should I say conscious vampirism. We're going to be delving in to the concept of vampiric magnetism, what vampirism is really about from a self-development standpoint, what a real vampire actually is within the modern world, and how vampirism can help you to alchemize dark matter energy, to improve your ability to create reality, and ultimately help you evolve. Really juicy subject for anybody interested in the occult sciences, particularly the darker aspects of the occult, so definitely stay tuned. Of all pains, hunger is the most useful, since it gnaws unceasingly, like the worm in the tomb. It is the gateway upon an emptiness vast and endless. No matter the quantity or kind of food, it is never filled up. All living creatures are but embodiments of hunger. Man is a hollow tube, ingesting food at one end and excreting waste at the other. How is it possible for man to be other than empty? As it is for the body, so it is for the mind. The natural condition of the mind is emptiness. All efforts to fill it are temporary diversions that fail to deny this truth. To learn arcane wisdom is the simplest of tasks. Purge the mind with terror. Purge the body with pain and hunger. Take yourself out into the empty spaces of the world that express, in their limited way, the same qualities as the empty spaces between the stars. The things that dwell there are ever watchful. They exist only to teach. After terror comes despair, and in despair the language of the shadows is intelligible. As you empty your mind of self, the night creatures fill it with their wisdom. The wisest of these creatures is the black beetle that lives on the dung of others. Dead food is better than food that is living, since its essence is nearer to the ultimate state of decay to which we all tend. From corruption arises new life. Fill yourself with corruption, and from it you shall be reborn, even as the fungi arise and glow with radiance on the faces of the dead who have rested in their tombs a span of years. Emulate the beetles and the worms, and learn their teachings. Eat of the dead, lest you be consumed by the emptiness. The living cannot teach the dead, but the dead can instruct the living. In the wasteland dwell those things that cannot abide the light of reason. Even as man is a creature of the day and ceases to know himself during the darkness, so do these things of the void cease to articulate their identity during the hours of the sun. They sleep by day and wake by night to feed. The terror of man is their nourishment, and their excrement is higher wisdom. The dung of these things may only be consumed when the mind is made empty by terror and is in a receptive state of despair. Unless the mind be perfectly purged, their excrement will be vomited up and lost. The exquisite rapture of hunger retains all foods, and extracts nourishment even from the husks of beetles and the castings of worms. Ingest wisdom with the darkness and sleep by day. Separate yourself from humanity, for what use have you for these pale, blinking fools and their ceaseless yammerings? In life they serve no function, and in death they are only food for the crawling creatures. Take yourself apart, embrace your fear, and listen to the darkness. Your teachers will come. As they appear before you, consume their wisdom. Grind their chitinous cases between your teeth and partake of their essence. The whirring of their wings and the rubbing of their legs is music. Consume all, even the other things that approach. Those that have no bodies, but only teeth and eyes that gleam in shadow. The crawling things instruct the body, and the shadow shapes teach the mind. But the wisdom of both must be consumed. There is only hunger in the universe. Devour everything. But what I just read was a very important snippet from Donald Tyson's Necronomicon, The Wanderings of Alhazred. This book, for my personal process, is proving more and more important the deeper I go into the occult sciences from the perspective of self-development. And what I just read beautifully describes and explains the process of vampirism and how it is related to death energy and decay from the perspective of transformation. I just want to take a moment to explain what vampirism actually is from the perspective of self-development. Okay, let's first identify the toxic vampirism that most people are familiar with. Okay, vampirism is the process of siphoning energy from an external force and pulling it into you. Okay, so vampirism is the process of taking energy from one source and pulling it into you. Okay, when you're referring to it in first person anyway. This is a highly misunderstood practice because most people who practice vampirism are doing so unconsciously. Unconscious or toxic vampirism is the most common form of vampirism within the modern world. This normally happens when somebody is holding on to a lot of lack and is requiring validation for that lack in order to prevent them from moving forward. Okay, and this all comes from the fact that we learn to find peace and comfort within a state of disempowerment and being validated in an unhealthy way. I will say that it is normal for a human being to want validation. In fact, it's important that a human being gets validation. It's important that we all get validation. Our inner children need validation from external forces in order to be able to grow. That, however, is healthy validation. Unhealthy or toxic validation is when somebody is wanting an external force to use as proof in order to validate their own internal wounding and use as a reason to not move forward. Okay, and this can become extremely toxic, particularly when somebody is approaching their self-development and evolution. It's very, very common for people to get into self-development, any form of self-development, and require some form of unhealthy or toxic validation. And then the use of knowledge, particularly within spirituality, the use of knowledge is then used to develop an unhealthy and toxic state of righteousness that stops someone from being able to evolve. Okay, and this is extremely common, particularly within the New Age communities. Okay, there is a lot of accumulation of knowledge that takes place within the spiritual communities, but where that knowledge is actually going and how it is being used is realistically a very different story. So if somebody is going into their self-development journey from the perspective of needing to validate their own internal wounding and use it as a reason not to move forward, then they can undergo years worth of therapy, They can undergo lots of different types of initiation, although it would be harder to hold that illusion together if you go into the darker currents of energy, such as the Necronomicon or the Clifothic realms, because they're there specifically to shatter the illusion. But these types of people can go from one healing modality to the other. They can go from one initiatory system to the other, one therapist to another, one healer to another, and not actually grow at all, and are just going to them for validation for their own internal wounding. So basically, what's happening is that they're going to, whether it's the healing session or the initiatory system, they are basically telling the healer or mentor what it is that they are wanting to hear, and then are basically using that sort of manipulation to basically siphon energy from the mentor or healer, and then use that energy to kind of validate their own internal wounding. So it's like, oh, I've just been to this healer, or I've just learned from this guru, and this guru says that, yeah, I'm doing really well at absorbing and accumulating this information, and yeah, it says, yeah, I don't really need to do any more work. Okay, and then they are taking the unhealthy external validation that they have attained from somebody else and using it as a reason to not go any deeper and do any more self-development. Okay, this is a very toxic form of vampirism that takes place within the spiritual communities on all levels. Okay, the amount of people that are actually doing it for the genuine need to evolve and grow, understanding that there's going to be different aspects of us that have different reasons for wanting to go into these things. But I personally feel, and I feel it is changing, but the number of people that are going into this sort of thing with the genuine intention to grow and evolve is actually very low compared to the amount of people who are wanting to go into these practices from the perspective of needing to validate an internal wound in order to basically have tangible proof that they don't need to move forward from where they are. Yeah, one of the most common places that this plays out is within the modern therapeutic community. Okay, whereby got a load of wounded people who then are like, oh, I'm extremely wounded. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go and train in therapy. I'm going to go and train in therapy. I'm going to accumulate all of this information. And then the information and all of these proven methods create this righteous energy that is then used as a reason to not move any further. And then any additional exploration into one's self-development is then filtered by that predefined state of righteousness. Okay, this type of vampirism can also happen from person to person as well. Okay, so somebody who is quite stuck in a wounded place from the perspective of, not wanting to move forwards and feeling more comfortable within a space of disempowerment are typically going to search for some form of external validation in order to validate where they are, and that is what creates the unconscious energy vampire. Okay, and when people think of vampirism or energy vampires, those are typically the types of people that really come to mind. Okay, people who are stuck within that lack don't really want to move forward because they've learned that it's unsafe to move forward. So they've learned to find comfort within the disempowerment and then seek energetic and external validation for that internal disempowerment. Okay, many people don't understand that when vampirism takes place from person to person, there is two-way vampirism that takes place as well. Okay, so energy vampires who are, unconscious toxic energy vampires who, siphon energy and use it for validation or unhealthy validation are also going to be paradoxically vampirized by the person that they are vampirizing. Okay, often what I see happening all the time, and many people have approached me, whether it's for healing programs, for mentoring, whatever that may be, with the belief that they're being siphoned from by an external force, whether it's a spirit, whether it's a person, whatever that may be. Okay, what I really see very often is the typical light worker empath who is getting siphoned, who's getting drained by all of these external things because they're stuck in illusions of martyrhood, but they don't want to own by default that they are operating from the illusion of martyrhood. Okay, so that means that they have learnt to draw their own level of validation through giving their own life force away. Okay, so these are one of the most common form of unconscious or toxic energy vampires because they are getting energy paradoxically. Okay, they're giving energy away and it creates this kind of victim energy. Okay, it's like I'm the victim of this. Oh, this happened to me, or I'm the victim of this vampirism that's taking place, or I'm a victim of this that happened to me here. Okay, and then what they're doing is that they are actually feeding energetically off of giving energy away, off of their own victimhood, and particularly if they are then validated within that state, particularly if they are validated within that victim-based vampiric state, then the programming is tightened and then they will remain within those illusions of martyrhood forever. Okay, and this does happen with a lot of people. Okay, a lot of empathic people have learnt very simply to draw their own self-worth from their ability to help other people. The empathic wound comes from a type of enmeshment trauma whereby the child basically feels responsible for the parents, okay, which then creates this sort of wounded masculine energy whereby the person then feels like they have to serve other people or they have to hold space for other people in order to be validated. Okay, and that in itself, many don't realize, is a state of unconscious energy vampirism. Because, yes, on one hand, you're going to help people, yeah, and you want to help people, the literal level intention is good. But the underlying intention is that there is an agenda that is behind helping those people, an agenda that isn't coming from a pure place and an agenda that is coming from internal lack, because if you don't help that person or you don't give your energy away, then you're not getting the validation and therefore the ego is going to search for it elsewhere. Okay, so these are a couple of examples of how unconscious vampirism can play out. You then have conscious vampirism, which is what we want to discuss. Okay, conscious vampirism, a lot of the time, comes from a place of self-development. Okay, however, not all the time. Okay, there are sort of vampiric covens that have developed. There are sort of vampiric orders from within the occult communities that may have different agendas behind them. But what you will find is that a lot of the time, and this could be a controversial subject for anyone who considers themselves into the darker occult community and who is interested in vampirism, I personally don't see any benefit in siphoning energy or life force from anybody else, or for example, from another person or something like that. Okay, that's just my personal viewpoint. I do not siphon energy from other people because I feel like the need to siphon energy from other people is a lot of the time coming from a wounded place. Okay, a lot of the time, if somebody feels the need to take energy from an external force and pull it into them, then they are, particularly from another person, then a lot of the time they are going to be operating from an internal space of lack, and then they feel that they may need to take energy from that person in order to, yeah, basically they're saying they need to take that energy from that person. Okay, and that is quite a toxic form of conscious vampirism and is a lot of the psychic vampirism that does take place within the occult community. I've also heard of people trying to elect donors as well, okay, whereby, you know, somebody actually wants to be somewhat siphoned by another vampire or another vampiric magician, so then actually willingly opens themselves up to that vampirism, and then the magician vampirizes that person. Okay, it again, you know, like there's varying opinions of that, but for me and my personal process, that's not something which has ever really proven to have any real genuine value. Okay, actually going and taking energy from another person, from my perspective, does not actually provide any initiatory value whatsoever. However, conscious vampirism does not have to mean siphoning energy from other people or stealing their life force or whatever that may be. In a sense, you are embodying, from an initiatory standpoint, you are embodying what we call the black hole technology. Okay, and this is used to describe the abyss of the Kabbalah, the chasm that separates the supernal triad from the lower densities. This chasm, particularly from a cliffothic standpoint, is viewed as a literal black hole. Okay, and when you're initiating into it, you are essentially merging with a black hole and essentially sort of becoming a black hole yourself, symbolically speaking, which means that you are wiring your nervous system and energy field back into its natural primordial state of consumption. Okay, and that is what the snippet I read at the beginning of this video was really describing. Okay, when you go through the Da'ath, or other similar realms, abyssal planes. Another example could be the Gununga Gap. Okay, there are lots of abyssal realms other than the Da'ath. But when you go through the Da'ath, particularly from a cliffothic standpoint, you are traveling through the black hole. Okay, traveling through the black hole, allowing yourself to be deconstructed. So you're then being spat out, okay, into the other side, okay, into what Kenneth Grant would have described as Universe B. Okay, I don't always like describing it as Universe A, Universe B, because I personally think it's a little bit limited, but it's an easy enough concept to understand, whereby Universe B is the primordial chaos, the womb, the dark matter that existed before, that is basically holding the projector for our physical, tangible experience, our multiverse, which is represented by Universe A. So going through the cliffothic process is a big energetic death and a big sort of almost process of absorbing and metabolizing death energy and essentially becoming a black hole yourself. Okay, which is basically turning what is positive into a negative and what is negative into a positive, which means that by nature, you are returning to your primordial state, which is outside of the multiverse itself, which on the microcosmic level, obviously physically, on the macrocosmic level, you're still here within this physical, tangible experience. But on the microcosmic level, your soul is going through a big process of initiation, of actually merging with death energy by traveling through the black hole that is represented by the Da'ath within the Kabbalah, or the cliffothic abyss anyway, and you are rewiring your nervous system to consume, okay, which is what it was naturally there to do before coming into this physical incarnation and being wired into a patriarchal system that places its divinity outside. Okay, so the real process, you could say, of becoming a vampire is essentially to merge your consciousness with some sort of abyssal realm through the means of occult ritualistic initiation, and then allowing yourself to go through the alchemy of that given realm. Okay, so the concept of the vampire is tied to death energy and is tied to the concept of the black hole. And when you're traveling through the Da'ath, you are merging with the black hole and essentially becoming an aspect of death itself. Okay, and if you look at mythological stories surrounding vampires, vampires are always extremely difficult to kill because they are technically undead. Okay, technically undead, which means when they are undead, they are already walking aspects of death energy. So by conventional means, vampires are not able to be killed in the same way. When we translate this to our own self-development, what this basically means is that you're merging with death energy, you're learning to consume, which means that you are naturally vibrating and emanating the resonance of death energy, which means that chaos is magnetized towards you, but is actually going to be processed by your system in a helpful way. Whereas the majority of the collective has an energy field that sort of rotates in a clockwise manner, what you could call a positive field or whatever you call it, Fibonacci or torsion field. Okay, it emanates outwards, it aligns with the masculine sort of energy of the angels, which hold our tangible multiverse in place. Whereas when you're merging with death energy, when you're going through the Da'ath, in a sense, you're rewiring your energy field to work in the opposite way, which is to naturally consume what is around you. Okay, can this power be used in a way that is not helpful? Yes, it can. Yeah, of course. You know, any energy has the potential to be used to both heal and harm. It's important to really get to grips with that concept. Light energy, dark energy, whatever you're referring to is not referring to good or bad energy. It's really the intention that is behind it. Okay, but when we're referring to conscious evolutionary vampirism, what you're basically doing is becoming the black hole, allowing your nervous system to move in what we call a negative torsion field, a negative anti-clockwise Fibonacci, which pulls energy inwards, and you're learning to consume. Okay, consume the teachings, consume the lessons, and consume what is around you. Okay, whereas by nature, humanity is wired to reject chaos. Okay, humanity is wired by nature to reject death energy. Okay, to reject anything that threatens its patriarchal system. Okay, and chaos, what is existent within us, the majority of our psyche, is a threat to a patriarchal reality, because a patriarchal reality has built this kind of pyramid structure that is out of a solid structure. And it's like, once you get to here, then you get to here. And then once you get to there, you're fine. But that doesn't support the continuous process of evolution that humanity is flowing within, nor does it support the natural flow of the planet that we are actually dwelling on, which is Earth. Okay, Earth is flowing in those 4 seasons. We've discussed this a lot if you've watched previous videos, whereby the Earth is moving in that death and rebirth cycle constantly. So is everything within the cosmos. So when you are essentially embodying the conscious vampire, you are learning to devour dark matter energy. You are learning to consume dark matter energy. You are learning to be one with death. You are learning to be one with dark matter. Okay, and being one with dark matter essentially means merging with your shadow self, merging with your inner child. It's a deep form of self-development. Okay, because if we are working with the darkest realms, such as the void, the abyss, the Da'ath described in the Kabbalah, Ginnunga gap described in the Norse tradition, then we are working with realms that resonate with the deepest portions of our unconscious. And in doing so, we're going to be merging with the deepest portions of our exiled inner child. Yeah, so when we're integrating our shadow on this level, dark energy will no longer be harmful to you. Okay, this is the thing. By default, because of the repressed nervous system that is wired into every living being, because of the repressed nervous system and the repressed energy field, dark energy is something like, oh God, we need to avoid darkness. Okay, oh, we need to avoid that because that's the devil. We need to avoid that because that's evil. And I can't go near that spirit because that spirit's dark. Oh, that shaman's not good, he's dark. Okay. It's an extremely destructive way to view it, because what you're doing is that you're rejecting your own shadow and placing it outside of you. So what you're doing when you are embodying conscious vampirism as an evolutionary tool is that you are training your system to be able to consume chaos and use it. Okay, use it to transform, use it to shape your reality. And because you are wiring your field in a way that actually welcomes death, okay, vitality will increase. Okay, physical vitality will increase significantly. Okay, because you are merging with the very concept of decay and you are becoming one with it. And it's a paradox. You're becoming one with it, you're embracing it. Okay, it no longer has a power over you. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't make you immortal. Yeah, we're all going to die. We're all going to shed this physical avatar. but your vitality will refine. Okay, your life force will refine because you are welcoming death as your friend. You are welcoming darkness as your initiator, and therefore are building an alliance with the darkness, becoming an aspect of it, and accepting the primordial beings that dwell within the darkness as aspects of you. And what better way to integrate your own unconscious and your shadow than to merge your consciousness with the darkest archetypes within the cosmos, because these are all representative of aspects of you. As I mentioned before, they have their own consciousness, but they represent you. So you, as the conscious vampire, as going through a process of initiating into a vampiric state, is in a sense, you are becoming an aspect of an undead. Yeah, you're becoming undead because you have already gone through those many cycles of death and rebirth. You are going to continue to go through those many cycles of death and rebirth, understanding that it's a natural phase of your development and that death energy is not to be avoided, darkness is not to be fought with, but embraced. Then it will become your food. It will become your sustenance. Okay, and that is what real vampirism is about. Okay, real vampirism is not about taking energy from other people. Okay, waste of time, occult plastic, outer layer nonsense. Okay, real vampirism is merging with death, welcoming it as an ally, merging with darkness, allowing it to be your initiator. The universe is a hungry place. Okay, we can deny that all we want, but ultimately, when we are going through this initiation, when we are embodying the archetype of the conscious evolutionary vampire, as I'm going to call it here and now, we are accepting our hunger. Yeah, we're using that hunger to devour, to evolve, to grow, okay, to become an aspect of the darkness itself so that we can integrate what is within the darkness, extract the true light, and ultimately grow and evolve. This is what true vampirism really is. So, devour everything. Learn to view everything in your life as some form of evolution, okay, and devour that evolution. Not talking about devouring the essence of other people like a lot of the occult community says about psychic vampirism. I'm referring to the devouring of the lessons of the external world, okay, becoming the great feeder in that respect. Yeah, becoming the black hole, understanding that when you're pulling energy in, yeah, you're pulling that challenge in, you're pulling the chaos in, okay, you are embracing the opposite to that. You're pulling the energy in, you're also pushing it out more and greater, because the black hole devours and then spits you out of the white hole, which emanates energy, pushes energy outwards instead of pulls it in. So what is negative has to become positive. Okay, so when you are devouring, you are embracing the paradox of that. Okay, you're devouring that chaotic energy, you're turning it into pure potential, and then you will become more radiant in nature and more magnetic in nature. Okay, vampirism is linked to your ability to create. Okay, and because we create from the unconscious space, you become more magnetic when you go through those types of vampiric initiation, purely because you are becoming one with the shadows. You're becoming one with the deep psyche, which is what pulls your reality in. Okay, so becoming one with your deep psyche, integrating the different aspects of yourself, you are then gaining more paradoxical control over what is able to come into your reality and the evolutionary potential that that is going to have for you. Okay, so this type of initiation is known to increase magnetism and your ability to create because you are willing to devour. Okay, it's paradox. You are willing to devour, you are opening yourself up to the creation. Okay, that follows that. You're embracing chaos. You are opening yourself up to the new order that will be established from that chaos. And that is what true vampirism is about. So I think that is everything that I need to discuss in today's video. Very big subject. Definitely get in touch. I have numerous programs that are suitable for helping you to prepare for such an endeavor. There's lots on my Patreon now with different initiatory systems and practices that can help you with this process, as well as lots on my premium membership as well. You can also book a mentorship with me if you feel the call, whereby we can do this work safely together. Links are in the description. But for now, thank you guys. Hit like and subscribe if this video was helpful to you, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.